I'm not using Reaper. Oh, there we go.
Great.
Should be able to be audible now. It's just we're since we're not doing a group and we don't need to auto duck or anything like that, so this is the point where I had to figure out how it wanted to show that. Okay, sound. Great. You hear me. Fantastic. We're on the way. Actually, I am going to turn this light on just to make sure. Yeah, there we go. Because that light actually does do some to light my bald ass head. You can hear me. You can see me. Okay. So, a couple of things. First and foremost, I have to ask if you can hear me and the music is playing. How is the audio? How is the video? I mean, we don't do a whole lot of movement on this particular channel, but we are trying to make sure that we're getting better latency than we were before. We've solved the first latency problem, which was the biggest one, which was the fact that we have to set ultra low latency in YouTube and you can't change it midstream. So that's why we had already set up our previous 2 streams, so it wasn't something that we could change. Now we've changed it. No music. Okay, you hear the music now. Interesting. Yeah, because the track ended. It started a new track. That's why. Yeah, there was a quiet track, and this one's a little louder. Light music, I'm a bit quiet. Yeah, I would be a bit quiet on this one. I'm gonna crank the gain a little. Let's just give myself a little boost here, because I don't want to change too many settings here that will affect the normal RPG Clinic stream, because I'm not actually at my machine. I'm at the I think this machine's called Gerald. So I'm at Gerald at the moment. For those of you who recognize that particular deep cut. No, this device's name is Dusk. Right, Gerald is the machine that's in the living room. We have too many machines here. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not competing with the music, and I'm understandable. Okay, that's fantastic. And in terms of video, I mean, I'm a little zoomed out as I am normally, but that's okay. That's not an issue. Just let me know if the video is doing okay as well. And yeah, if you could give me an idea of how much latency is currently here. So there's 2 major sources of latency from chat from you typing in a message to when you see it on the YouTube screen. The first is YouTube itself. There's always going to be latency there. We know that. That's okay. And we fixed it to the best of our ability, as far as we can tell. YouTube has an inbuilt delay that will always be between 2 and 5 seconds that we just can't do anything about as long as we've selected the right stuff, which is good. Second thing is that the chat that you're seeing on the screen right now is currently pulling from the Streamlabs chat, not bot, but Streamlabs chat, which is has a bit of a delay itself as well. It's not as instant as it was if you're just pulling directly from Twitch chat. So one thing that we are going to have to do is we're going to have a look to see if there's a better way to put YouTube chat on the screen. The other reason is that all these wonderful emotes do not show as easily. Some of the more YouTube specific ones that aren't a Windows emote, but that are a YouTube emote, they're not currently showing up as far as I can tell. If somebody could throw one on, weirdness, I know you can. If anybody can throw an emote, it's yeah, so as Mister's there, yeah, person turquoise waving, face purple crying, yeah, so those aren't showing up properly yet. We're still looking to see if we can find a solution for that, because at the moment, that's an issue. So that's something that we have to figure out. But don't worry, this is, as far as I can tell now, the latency is at a point where now it's much more easy to interact with us, because instead of the latency being 20 to 30 seconds like it was yesterday, now it's around 5 to 7. which is a much easier way for us to communicate. The other thing that I can't do at the moment, but that I have just learned how to do literally while we were letting the stream like go up, was putting on a putting your like highlighting messages on screen and the like. That we can't do at the moment because the software that we use for that works for Twitch, and if you want it to work for YouTube, you gotta slip them a couple of bucks, which is something that we can do thanks to your support. The patron support that you've shown us so far has been extremely appreciated and generous as we make this transition. But what it does mean is that at the moment I can't highlight your messages as easily as I could before. That's okay. Today's really mostly a test stream. We're trying to figure out to make sure that if we can get the experience on YouTube as good or better than the one that we had on Twitch. There's a few things that we've had notice from already. So one, YouTube seems to have better visual and audio quality for people who are watching, which is great. That's what we want. The settings that we've put in right now are also designed to make sure that people can watch at higher resolutions if they can. I know that some people were noting in our first marathon stream on Saturday that there was some capping that was occurring, but we seem to have solved a lot of those problems because yesterday we had fewer reports of that. And then today, same sort of thing. We are making an effort to try and make sure that not only is the video working properly, but that also we aren't hitting buffering, because Twitch was also hitting that every once in a while. We would have to buffer. And finally, we don't have ads, which is pretty cool. Twitch was forcing us to show ads. We didn't want to. It's not like we make any money off them anyway. And the ads are disruptive for people because, I mean, when you're playing a role-playing game, you can't kind of just be like, and then Macros opens the door, she lifts her clave and bellows, and then it cuts to an ad for like, I don't know, virus software or Mazda 3 or crisps. I don't know. But yeah, we didn't want ads. We never did. So we're hoping that this is a way to do that. And finally, there's discoverability. While it's not critical for us, obviously we love our community. Thing is, communities ebb and flow. And if you don't attract new people, communities always will eventually die because people leave. They have other things that they got to do. They fall in with other crowds, or maybe we'll start playing a game that you're not as interested in, so you tune out for a bit, which means that we do have to find ways to grow, and Twitch is not the way to do that. Its discoverability is ass. So the only real ways for us to grow are to reach out on social media, forums, Reddit, Discords, which we admittedly are not great at, and we don't want to be because it's not something that interests us terribly. But also, YouTube has better discoverability because its algorithm is much better trained for people who are like, oh, I'm interested in this topic, and so therefore it'll show it, as opposed to on Twitch. On Twitch, it might never know that you're interested in, say, Werewolf the Apocalypse, but YouTube might because you have done those sorts of things. So that's what that's kind of looking at the moment for us. It's usually some esports thing or phone ad for you. Yeah. This is actually going to dovetail a little bit into a topic that I want to discuss. Yeah, we were tabletop RPGs. At one point we had the suggestion that we should be Dungeons and Dragons. We should just call ourselves Dungeons and Dragons, even if that's not what we were playing. And first, that's kind of disingenuous. And also, we shouldn't have to cheat in order to be found. That's something that we felt pretty strongly about. And again, because we're not like super concerned with that, then it wasn't something we were willing to do. But YouTube switched that. This is kind of a bonus. We've talked about this before. This is old news for most of you, but the reason we switched to YouTube, there was a few. One, Twitch, in terms of support, people subscribing to our Twitch channel, extremely appreciated, but most of that money, or rather I should say 50% of that money, was being taken by Amazon, and then another chunk of that was being taken from taxes and fees and the like. So while it was very appreciated, and obviously if you look at the equipment that we've managed to build for this thing, that's all thanks to you, and that's incredibly appreciated. We kind of felt like people weren't getting the value that they were putting in. 2, Amazon was forcing us to show ads, which we didn't want to do. 3, discoverability. YouTube is better discoverability for us. 4, putting us on YouTube kind of gives us a centralized place where then as soon as the stream is finished, the VOD is available for people to watch right away. Amazon technically forced us to wait for a while before we were able to post a VOD. We think they actually removed that requirement a while ago, but still not something that we were thrilled with. And then there's also terms of service. Even though we were never really in danger of violating Amazon or Twitch's terms of service versus here on YouTube, there are distinctive things about their terms of service that we prefer on YouTube rather than Twitch. And they revolve around sex and titillating imagery and sexual content. We don't have sexual content the way that these platforms define it, because what we are describing, even though our characters do engage in sexual relationships, we never describe the sexual contact in a manner that is designed to for sexual gratification. That's YouTube's wording for it, which is the wording that we prefer. Being able to say, we're not doing this so that we are sexually gratifying others is an easier way for us to kind of say, okay, we know we're in the clear. Whereas Twitch, the language is a lot more nuanced. I'm actually going to call up the Twitch terms of service here so that I can show it out there. I mean, the thing is, we're allowed to be sexy, and we also don't mind other people being sexy. The thing that we are that we're not thrilled with, though, is, for instance, here. Sexual content. To ensure content on Twitch is appropriate for diverse audiences, certain sexual content is prohibited, regardless of the medium used to create it, digital or non-digital. Users are prohibited from broadcasting, uploading, soliciting, promoting, offering, and linking to pornographic content. That's the note. Now, they have notes and clarifications, like direct links to websites that primarily provide sexual content are not allowed. We allow certain content that includes sexual themes, providing it is educational in nature, has relevant content classifications labeled a private of the stream, and doesn't break other guidelines such as nudity. And their example is saying you can have content which showcase how to apply a condom on a banana, provided the intent is to educate. The thing is, they never really said very specifically whether us describing a fact that a character is hitting on another character and potentially taking them to bed, that's not clear in Twitch. We're 95% sure that we are in the clear for it, but it isn't 100%. And that's something that we also just have a problem with, or at least that I have a problem with. We kind of discussed this. I'm not going to claim to speak for Liz, Scott, or Kate here in the next few sentences, but part of the issue that I have with Twitch is that I don't care if streamers have, I don't care if you're wearing a low-cut top. I don't care even if you are getting by on your sex appeal. The problem that I have is that I want it defined. I want to know exactly what is okay and what is not. At one point, Twitch said, you can't wear a bikini unless you are in an appropriate location where you would wear a bikini. And that's where the hot tub meta came in, where streamers were literally getting inflatable plastic hot tubs, sitting in them in their underwear or bathing suits and shooting that instead. And then that was okay. But I'm not comfortable with the idea that there's workarounds and loopholes, and then they can kind of claim we're not peddling this, except that we're also allowing our top streamers to do this in ways, as long as they jump through very esoteric hoops. YouTube's terms of service, however, are a lot clearer for us. So in terms of the policies, let's see here. So it's if I go YouTube, what is allowed on YouTube? YouTube's community guidelines. So nudity and sexual content policy says very specifically Explicit content meant to be sexually gratifying is not allowed on YouTube. Posting pornography may result in content removal or channel termination. Videos containing fetish content will be removed or age restricted. In most cases, violent, graphic, or humiliating fetishes are not allowed on YouTube. And in some cases, we may make exception for content with educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic context, including content that's in the public's interest. This makes it pretty clear that you can't do something if it's meant to be sexually gratifying. So they say, for instance, don't post content on YouTube if it shows the depiction of clothed or unclothed genitals, breasts, or buttocks that are meant for sexual gratification. So instead of saying you can't do this unless it's for a specific educational purpose, what they're saying is you can't do it if you're trying to be sexually gratifying or pornographic. I like this better. And it keeps us in the clear because none of the games that we're playing here are designed specifically to sexually gratify our audience. Now, you're welcome to do whatever the hell you want in the comfort of your own home, but because it's not what it's designed for, we don't have to worry about it. And that makes me feel a little bit better because the vagueness of Twitch makes me more uncomfortable. I know we're okay on YouTube. So that helps. Yeah, okay, so there's also the live chat versus top chat. I think that at this point, one of the things that I'm interested in your opinions on is, do you like the fact that there's a live chat versus top chat? I'm not sure if that's something that we can change. I think it might be. But also this XP thing that they have here where it shows the number 1, 2, and 3 chatter. I don't actually know how that's calculated. I don't know how YouTube figures out who's who, because it's definitely not the most messages, and it's definitely not the length of messages. So, oh, we can't change the live versus top. Okay. Well, then that's something that we'll have to bear in mind. One thing I found a bit silly, Mr. says, was that you could not link. We also couldn't mention having an OnlyFans on Twitch, and people would sometimes get suspended for even joking, right? Like, that's something frequency and super chats. Ah, okay. Hey, Kung Fu Fenris. Good to see you. Activity does have some effect on XP, I think. Top chat has more moderation filtering. Because here's the other thing. I'm also using a program that may have that latency built in. So, again, we're figuring it out, but it seems like the experience is better so far. Just checking on people for that. So that was actually kind of a hidden reason why specifically I wanted to make the shift to YouTube. And that's something that I'm glad that we just now have access to, that we don't have to worry about. And that's okay. Because it even says content that depicts sexual acts, behaviors, or sex toys that's meant for sexual gratification. So that's that, which means that if anybody ever decided to report our stuff on YouTube, it's a lot easier for us to defend. And that helps. It's not like sex plays a majority role in our games, although it is a theme that applies, and it's a theme that all 4 of us engage with. So it was a consideration for us. Now, the rest of the stuff that's on YouTube, we definitely aren't running afoul of anything else. Like, we don't have violent or dangerous content. We aren't selling regulated goods. We're not promoting misinformation. And you could make the case that we fall under artistic content, under educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic content, because we are performers doing a performance live. So you could say 6-second delay. Okay, Kung Fu Fenris, that's hopefully a lot better. 6 seconds is actually close to what some people were experiencing on Twitch already. We're going to see if there's a way for us to bring that number down a little bit. I'm prepared to say that this might be as good as it gets, but I'm hoping that this is a decent and reasonable delay as opposed to 20 or 30 seconds. Is Is it really performance if you don't add it to your IMDb page? I don't know if RPG Clinic counts as something that we can put on IMDb. I suppose we could, but I am also not necessarily looking forward to having to categorize the 10 years worth of streams. So that's over 500 credits that we'd get on there, which would be a lot. You have no idea how moderation tools work? Yeah, so that's something that you'll be able to help with. Oh, I've got a thing. I got a message. Let's take a look at that. This message is from my local tech wizard. A chat window link. Okay, so I'm gonna have to open that, test that out, because there's another topic that I wanted to discuss, and it is one that we haven't discussed a whole lot of on this channel, but I am going to preface this by saying, just first and foremost, that we've had a couple of questions in the channel come up specifically about AI. Just switching here because I'm going to try a new window that might have better thing. Now, Kate, the link that you sent me, is that meant as a browser source or is that just meant for me? Yeah, /me. Yeah, that's super fair. Browser source. Okay, great. Let's try a new browser source. So I'm gonna create a new one just so that we don't lose the old one. We'll call it Chat2. It's gonna block my face off for a little bit. And that is gonna be a YouTube chat. Let's see if we can just make sure that it is following the same dimensions, 550, 700. Put this here. All right, but we're gonna add a little bit of height to it. Maybe a little more, because what we're doing now is we're just driving that off there. Yeah, and let's interact. We'll go into live chat. And let's push it to the limit, because we don't need this. Put it up here. See how this feels for everybody. So again, we're trying new things, but one of the things that we're trying here specifically is to see if the latency can improve, because latency is one of the things that people have done. So I'm going to try latency test on my end, although it's not the best option. So I am going to see the time here. That's much faster, I think. So now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do a latency test now and tell me if it's improved since the last time you did one. Just tell me if there's an improvement or if it's about the same. You have a 5 count instead of a 6 count with dark chat. 3 seconds. Okay, so that is much better. So let's see here if that helps. Also now emotes are showing up on there, which is nice. Improved slightly. Okay, that's great. So about the same. Great. So, but what I'm seeing is that does have a better latency than there. So 1 or 2 seconds faster. So we have to determine whether that is worth it. Whether that 1 or 2 seconds is worth it for our to figure out our chat thing versus the other. So great, thumbs up for that. So the topic of AI, I'm gonna throw this out there, but I'm also going to, at this point in time, I am going to show, we have safety cards. Green means you're all good. pause means you need people to pay attention to you for a second, and stop means I'm not okay to continue until everybody says that they're ready to go. The reason why I'm doing this is because AI is a pretty controversial topic right off the bat. So I'm going to try to have a discussion about this. And I want people to know that if I have to shut the conversation down, it is absolutely not me saying that your opinion is wrong. It's not me saying that I don't want people to talk about it. It's just that there's a limit to how much I can moderate a discussion about AI here on YouTube. And I know that people get very emotional sometimes about this discussion. So one thing that I do want to preface here and now is that this is not meant to be a stream where I judge other people and their use of artificial intelligence tools. That is not what I'm intending to do here. And what I'm hoping is that that's not eyelash on my glasses. I'm hoping that that's not what other people are intended to do as well. Green card looks blue for some reason. Yeah, that's true. Oh, it's because it is reacting as if this is a green screen. Hold on, I can fix that. That's just because we restored this and it comes with a chroma key, which I can disable. There we go. And now it should look green. Yep. So then that's it. Oops. Anyway, so I just want to make sure, I want to make that clear, is that this isn't about judging anybody's use of AI personally, because it's a tricky subject. There's a few things that I know of in my heart of hearts. One, this is a Pandora's box. It has been opened and it cannot be closed. AI is not going away. It is possible that we will hit an AI bubble and that bubble may pop, and then it'll turn out that like all this massive investment in AI is going to be shown to be foolish, but AI itself is not going anywhere. LLMs, stable diffusion, image and video generation, those technologies are out of the box and they will not go away because no country can afford to do that. If Canada, where I live, decides at one point to say AI is no longer allowed to be used, first of all, you'd have to define AI, and that's a very wide-ranging topic, but that means that other countries will just continue to use it, and this is not a technology that's going to go away. Two, just because the technology exists doesn't necessarily mean that it is a net positive for everybody. It's definitely not. There are going to be jobs that will be replaced by AI, for sure, and it's already happening. And there are the comments of nobody cries for the piano tuners, nobody cries for the milkmen, nobody cries for the horse and buggy. True, and we do need to be able to adapt to technology. I think some of the danger in this, though, is that AI is in the hands of the mega rich, and if the mega rich aren't going to share, it means a net negative for everybody else. That's an issue. And finally, I want to make one other thing clear. Your individual use of AI, you yourself, you personally, are not making the same kind of environmental impact as industry doing it. If you use ChatGPT, I am not judging you, and I'm also not going to say that I think that you're a bad person, and I'm not going to say that you are hurting the planet or hurting me personally or whatever. The technology's out of the box. So if you're going to use it, that's fine. What I wanted to discuss, though, is the ramifications, ethics, and usefulness of AI in terms of role-playing, and exploring what we might talk about in terms of that. Because I can tell you here, my job for a long time was as a narrative designer, and AI threatens that job. Just put it very bluntly, it threatens that. AI threatens voiceovers and voice acting. That is for sure. But we're talking about home use here. We're talking about if you are using AI for your tabletop role playing, how do you feel about that? What is your level of tolerance for AI? So I'm going to throw that question out to you. Again, reminder, just trying to keep it civil. I'm also going to say I am not setting RPG Clinic's like official viewpoint on AI here today. It's not a conversation that Kate, Liz, Scott, and I have taken with any significant detail. I can tell you that at the moment, I do not use AI. And I do not believe that the others are actively using AI at the moment. But I'm not ready to make a blanket statement. So this is not a this is not an official word thing here. Yeah, and we're not about to surprise you with a switch to using AI. We're not planning on doing that. So when I say level of tolerance, and when I say AI, what I'm curious about is, what do you think is okay for you at your table? What is something that you would accept? Because I have heard opinions from people who use AI aren't welcome at my table at all, versus people who use AI can do so as long as you are doing it in the privacy of your own home and you're not, say, streaming, to people saying you can use AI at any point as long as it's not obvious, to you can use AI even if it is obvious. So that's kind of curious what your thoughts are. So that's the other thing here, is that AI has so many different variants. Like Gilligood says, personally, I use AI for some of my schoolwork, mainly to check my spelling in long documents. Is a spell check artificial intelligence? That's a question, right? Like, just because a program has an element that people associate with artificial intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that it falls under the same thing. A lot of the objection over AI comes from the fact that the concept of large language models were because these companies took works that were copyrighted and trained off them without compensating those who were there or without their permission. So there's that too. Yes, we're speaking about generative AI, Eravana, very specifically. Yeah, like that's the thing that we are talking about here. So everyone says, very high level opinion on the concept. There are and have been a ton of online generators for years to assist storytellers with some of the work out there. So conceptually, I'm not opposed. And to a new version of this. And I, to a certain degree, I am 100% on board with that. I know people who rubber duck by talking to AI, by saying like, I have an idea for a campaign. Here is the stuff that I'm thinking about. And they basically feed it all into a large language model. And then the large language model spits out things like, here's some ideas for you to consider, or here's some things that I see are common in your stuff or whatever. And I don't think I even necessarily have a problem with that. But I do think that it can be disingenuous for you to pose something that is your creation, when in fact, all you did was prompt an AI. So it's one thing to say, hey, AI, here is my campaign setting. Let's do some tweaks to it, versus AI, give me a custom setting for my campaign. Make sure that it involves cyberpunk dragons and the letter Q. And then putting that out there and then saying, yeah, I'm the one who created this setting. You didn't. You prompted an AI. Which to me, I know that that's it might be splitting hairs for some, but for me, what you're doing is the difference between using a tool and then just letting a tool do the work, which are different things. Kung Fu Fenris says, I view generative AI in the same vein as trans-unsaturated fatty acids. It is bad for our health as a species. The step beyond the random tables is the cognitive engagement point, where, and then continues on. Everyone says, when it was very new, I was of the opinion that it was an interesting tool for some use, like art for home games, to explain an idea where there may not be a budget. But the information that's come out about the larger impacts, if I'm saying giving an idea for character design based on this, how many other people are doing the same, and what's that impact? Mr. says, I'll also admit that with the best exalted name generators all going down, I've used it to make some killer names for exalted NPCs. To finish Kung Fu Fenris, the step beyond the random tables is the cognitive engagement, where we forget the work. But as long as you do the cognitive work to use it, I have less bad feelings about it. But it is like eating a lot of US food. Shots fired. It is unhealthy and I really don't want it. So the creative exercise, I think, is something that's important for us not to lose, because AI, or at least large language models as they exist right now, are incapable of creativity. They're only capable of using the creativity of others and mashing it together and then hopefully giving you something that you can use. It cannot think. It does not think. And it doesn't have a soul. One of the things that I saw, which I thought was very cool, it was a quote. Let me see if I can find it here. AI, soul, art. AI accidentally made me believe in the concept of a human soul by showing me what art looks like without it. And that's something that I think is quite telling. Which means that if you're using it as a tool, if you are engaging with it and using a large language model to help shape your own creativity, I have less of an issue with that. Things like name generation, I have used websites for looking up baby names in order to find names, and I don't think using an LLM is all that different from that, other than you're removing one drudge work step. If you ask because what you're basically saying is, now I can ask in plain language, I would like a series of names that would be for somebody who matches this description, and then the LLM can churn out those names for you. That's not really all that different from me going on to baby name generator and finding out a few things. Just, it would take me some extra steps and extra time. So I don't necessarily have that as much of an issue there as well. TT says, I've used it for character picks mostly for summarizations of topics and conversations. The latter I research most of the time, if it isn't a 5-second topic. Yep. So environmental impact, there's a hell of a lot of issues that needs to be curbed before I will like it. That's fair. One thing that I will say, though, is that the environmental impact is very real, but it is exaggerated in some cases. That's not enough for me to say that it's okay. I don't think that. But one thing that I recently discovered is that the amount of water that generative AI uses, some people have claimed that it's way too much. It is a drop in the bucket compared to agriculture. So if you're very concerned about water usage, stop eating almonds. You can build a data center that fills the same size as an almond farm, and the almond farm would still generate like 10 to 100 times more water usage than data centers. It's not to say that electricity isn't the issue, though, because obviously electricity costs to manufacture. I'm lucky enough to live in an area where our electricity, we've already paid the environmental impact for our electricity, because here it's hydroelectric. And hydroelectric does have an environmental cost, but once it's running, and it's quite low compared to some others. So my energy costs, I don't have to feel as badly about right now, but that's a thing. Everyone said, I saw an interesting opinion theory, particularly with a lot of gaming companies exposing or admitting that they used AI for ideation stages in games, is that their shareholders are possibly demanding its use because they're invested in AI elsewhere and it's keeping the line going up. I think that's an interesting observation. If you in chat want to talk about it, you can. I will say that this is, in terms of video game creation, I feel a little uncomfortable discussing this openly because I work in this industry. I can tell you that I work at a studio where currently we're not allowed to use AI to generate anything in the finished product. And I don't even know if we're allowed to use AI for other things. That's as far as I know. I know the policy right now is basically not AI focused. And just because I work in one of the studios doesn't mean that I can make a judgment call on other studios. So that's a thing that I'm going to steer a bit clear of, just because it's a bit more. I was afraid she wouldn't get a chance to share. So there's also some things like, we've discussed in the past on Clinic Hours about things like which games we would play versus which games we'd stream. So one of the examples that's come up, for instance, is Scion, where I've said that Scion, I think, is an interesting setting, but I don't want to play it on stream because I don't want to publicly run a game where I have to play elements of multiple different pantheons, a bunch of which I definitely do not have a significant amount of training in. And so I don't want to unintentionally offend somebody with my depiction of, say, Quetzalcoatl or Thor, right? Like that's something that I'm not comfortable doing on stream. But I think that it's perfectly all right for you to do that sort of thing at home. Because an audience at home means that you have less of an onus to try to get everything correct and to try to position yourself in that way. Because you can learn and make mistakes a bit more easily than if you're doing it live in front of an audience that is recorded. And essentially, once something is recorded and posted to the internet, it is effectively immortal. So I'm not comfortable running Scion on stream, whereas I might be more comfortable running it at home. I'm not sure I'd want to, based on the story path system. I'm not a huge fan. But there it is. And the same sort of thing for me applies to AI. If somebody's using AI to generate an image, I don't necessarily think that this is a major crime. I do think that it becomes a lot harder to justify doing so if you are streaming it and not being open about where you got your images. Because the implication there is that you are using an asset as a part of a performance, as part of an artistic creation that isn't you hanging out with your friends, but it's you sharing something with the world, and then doing so in such a way that you are not open about how these things have been created is a little iffy for me. I'd rather at that point commission an artist. If I was doing, say, a character portrait for a game, I'd rather commission someone than generate it using AI and then post it for RPG Clinic things. So that's my take. Again, it's not an RPG Clinic take. That's my take. Because I can't speak for Kate, Liz, or Scott. They're not here. And they haven't told me specifically what to say. Yeah. Using it for reference when you're on a budget, but not relying on it for the finished product is okay. So this is something that is something that I would also agree with, in that one of the things that tools can do is that they can take away the cost from the rich. For example, it used to be that if you wanted to write a manuscript and submit it to a publisher, you basically had to have it typed, which meant you had to be able to afford a typewriter or afford a word processor, and those things were not always cheap. And as these technologies get cheaper and cheaper, this lowers the barrier of entry. Being able to use image editing software, originally you had to pay for something that was very powerful like Photoshop, but now there are open source alternatives that you can use, and that's great. If it's something like I am creating a thing and I need placeholder art, and so I've generated placeholder art with AI, well, the question at that point is, how much of it is placeholder and how much of it is you trying to convince yourself that it's placeholder and then you're not actually going to do anything with it? And also, if it's placeholder to me implies that you are doing something very quickly, because the effort to do it well isn't required at this stage. So if you are spending 10 hours refining an image in AI as a placeholder, I would say you're wasting your time. A placeholder, you should be able to ask an AI and be able to finish it in like a minute or two, and then slap it in there, knowing that you're going to replace it later. People can disagree with me on that, but I will also say that right now, the audience to which we find the audience, like you, people who are in this chat right now, and the people who are in the Discord, and the people who watch our streams, in general, are audiences that would probably react pretty poorly if we put AI slop on the channel. So that's another thing. We're probably not going to do it. Kung Fu Fender saying, I personally will not support using AI using platforms and entertainment forums, and I will not be supportive of the usage of generative AI in my communities. I can't stop anyone though. Yeah, like I'm also not going to tell people you can't use generative AI. Or if you use it, then you can't be part of the community. I know that if I were to be asked, I would have to ask the others about something like, for instance, if someone makes fan art for us, we have received fan art in the past. It's always very appreciated. It's very cool. We love it. I just don't know how I'd feel if the fan art was like AI generated. I think that's something that we'd have to discuss. It hasn't come up. That's also assuming that we'd be able to detect it. It's, at the moment, we think it's easy to detect AI, and sometimes it is not. And that's just a sign that it's just getting more and more effective, which is tough to see. Just throw a Temple Runner clip in the corner and people won't notice. Yeah. Personal thought, the experience of creating a character pick has brought me much closer to consider commissioning an artist for anything. Yeah. Because that's another thing. Absolutely. The idea that you can use AI to rapidly iterate on something and then create something as well. I know concept artists who do this now. Concept artists who, when someone says, as an example, I'm designing a character and I want you to, I want like 10 thumbnails so that then I can choose a few that we want to iterate on. And the concept artist will straight up use artificial intelligence and generate 10 concepts, because they can do that in a minute, which is impossible for a human to do. Say, here's 10 random looking people, which is closest to what you're looking for. Then the designer says number 2, 6, and 8. And then the concept artist will draw based on 2, 6, and 8, because then they don't have to do the original 10 sketches. They can focus their work on the 2, 6, and 8. And then they can create stuff with their own, you know, like they can add their own creativity to it. And that's something that I've seen people do. I'm not a concept artist, so it's hard for me to judge. But the ones who've spoken to me about it have said that this is something that they've added to their workflow. I've spoken to 3 who have done this. One is upset that they have to do this, but they say that they kind of have to in order to stay relevant. And the other 2 are thrilled to be able to do this, because they say that making crappy thumbnails is something that isn't as interesting to them as then working off of the crappy thumbnails that they get from AI. Because then they can add their artistic element to that, but then they don't have to be like long hair, short hair, blonde hair, blue hair, green hair, long nose, short nose. Is it going to be somebody tall, lanky, robust? All of those things are things that then they can kind of take care of. So that's the difficulty. Have you seen the woman on YouTube who points out AI in Christmas items or artworks in stores? No, I haven't, Miss Rich. But that's going to keep happening, and we can't stop that. That's one of the things that is hardest for me. It's just knowing that some of these things are things we just cannot stop. I know an artist who had to roll back their Photoshop version because AI features being jammed in there was fucking it all up. Yeah. So I do have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. I get it through work, and the amount of AI stuff that just keeps getting pushed into it is eyebrow raising. Like, genuinely, when I launch these programs, it seems like every other time I do, it starts telling me about a new thing that it can do that's generative AI, and I have to say, I'm not allowed to use those things. Stop. Because there's a legal question about it, one that hasn't been resolved yet, where if I use generative AI and then somebody out there says, this looks like my work, it was trained on my work, and therefore I own part of this, I don't know if that legal question has been satisfied yet. And so therefore I don't even want to risk having anything AI generated that could make it into a final product. There has to be a line that's drawn. So I never stopped using CS2. I refuse to pay a subscription to something I've already bought. Weirdness, you are not alone. I have the subscription because work basically provided it for me so that I can do work. And in order to keep up with everybody else who uses it at work, I need to use the latest version. But CS2 is honestly pretty damn good. And there's lots of great open source things too. Admittedly, I've never used something that's open source, like GIMP is one of them. I've never used something that's open source that I've liked as much as the Creative Cloud subscription stuff. but that's not to say that I wouldn't. For a while, I actually used Affinity products to copy things. And then one thing that I've wanted to learn how to use is DaVinci Resolve for video editing, just because that's a powerful video editor, but it's not tied to Adobe. Copilot is being kept by several half-assed script on my Windows PC at the moment. Yeah, but Microsoft has also come out and admitted that nobody likes Copilot. Flower of August says, I think Steam is pretty strict on having you put an AI tag on your game if you used AI at all in the development process. And that's a distinction between the Epic Game Store and Steam. Steam has that requirement, and the Epic Game Store does not, because also Epic doesn't, like the owner of Epic, Tim Sweeney, has come out and said that he believes that AI should be used in all video games, so why would you bother tagging these things? It's just a tool. So, I've started using Affinity. Yep. Tried to keep in the past, but it's fiddly in annoying ways. Yeah. So that's the thing, is that what Adobe actually has, I think, down pat more than anything else is its user interface. UI is incredibly important for these sorts of things. So anyway, I appreciate the conversation that's being had. I think that it's, I like the fact that it's been quite civil. But I will say that I have not used AI for RPG Clinic purposes personally. I don't plan on it anytime soon, but I'm also going to say that just I'm not somebody who is ready to just say all AI is evil, it should never be used, anyone who uses it is bad. I don't think that's the case, and there may be a point where I will find that it will help complement my workflow. One of the things that I told myself that I'd do this year, that this was the year that I was going to learn how to use AI, because I'm convinced that if I don't, I could become obsolete, that my job will be in jeopardy. I haven't really done a great job of learning it yet. I've learned about them, but I haven't learned how to use them a whole lot. And I'm trying to find the courage to do that, because it is a technology that, frankly, I think is fascinating, and I think that it's terrifying. And the existential threat that it poses to me personally, based on my skill set and my work, is significant. But I also, unfortunately, selfishly maybe, I feel like if I don't learn, then I will be at risk. If one day somebody says, we're looking for somebody to fill this role, and I have all the qualifications, so does somebody else, but then they say, and you have to be able to use an AI workflow, and if I have no experience with that, then that could mean my career goes into a tailspin. So we'll find out. We'll find out. Yeah, Kung Fu Fenris is correct. Luddites were not against progress. The destruction of their reputation was exactly painting them as anti-progress, but they wanted even progress for all. They were against the way machines are being implemented, and also specifically the fact that the machines came at the benefit of the owner of the machine, the one rich enough to be able to buy the machine, and then benefited no one else, and in fact detracted from everyone else. That I agree with. I think AI potentially could be something that is amazing and that can help the planet. But I'm worried that if that AI is amazing, but the only people who ever get to use it are those who are the mega rich, then all that means is that the mega rich gets to benefit while everybody else sees their quality of life diminish. And that's not what I want. Nobody cries for the piano tuners, because it turns out that the general quality of life of the planet went up when we had things like radio. But AI can't only benefit the Elon Musks of the world. It can't only benefit the mega rich. And that's the issue. We've watched shows like Star Trek in the past. Star Trek famously has a computer that you can talk to using normal language, and it can respond using normal language. And sometimes I wonder, like, is the Star Trek computer an LLM? Is it just a really advanced LLM? I don't know. Yeah. Don't use AI to produce more. Use it to produce the same as before, but with less of our precious time on this earth being spent making it. We can always go the Warhammer 40k route and get rid of all AI. Yeah. Federation is also past the use of money. Exactly, Zaplica. That's... yeah. Majel Barrett or Majel Roddenberry was the voice actor for the computer. And here's something interesting. I think, this could be apocryphal, but I think I have heard that she even gave permission before her death that if anybody made an AI clone of her voice, that they could use it in order to make sure that Federation computers could sound the same in the future. We've seen evidence of this in that James Earl Jones licensed the use of his voice so that Disney can continue to use his voice for Darth Vader past his death. It's a tricky situation because on the one hand, you should be allowed to do what you want with your own voice. And on the other hand, it can really kill people, kill their careers. Arc Raiders is a game that people have told me, like, it's a fun game, go play it. And I can't bring myself to, because Arc Raiders uses artificially generated voices, because they basically brought in a bunch of actors who I believe are likely non-union to record their sound bank so that then they can generate those voices in the game. Now, first of all, the voices don't have good emotion, and it has that AI quality to it, which I don't enjoy listening to. But I also don't like it because they basically said, this game that is huge and makes a shit ton of money, we didn't want to pay voice actors, but we wanted voice in it, so we did this instead. We took this shortcut, and that shortcut cuts people out of work. And then they blow up, they make tons of money, and now they're not willing to replace those actors with those artificially generated actors with real ones. And it kind of makes me feel shitty. Because it does not sound as good. They've just decided that they don't need it to sound good. So. Yeah. Erwin says a very interesting video that was put up by Hank Green and that I've seen elsewhere is that the biggest issue here in the United States is we don't have the infrastructure to support our growth. So computers are paying for AI even if they've never used it. Yep. And that is true. That is true. Hank Green is an interesting guy to listen to. Just let Moriarty take over the Enterprise. I mean, weirdness. You're speaking my language. Holodecks being allowed at all in the Star Trek universe is just a massive suspension of disbelief. Because, you know, God damn it, Kate. Fuck. Yeah, because there's other things that are troubling, but also not troubling and fascinating to me about AI, which is in terms of role playing, which is people who use LLMs for role play. And these are people who are getting contact in a way that they can handle. You can't risk offending an AI. They can't be offended. And so for some people, this is a great thing for them to reach out to. They feel less lonely. It can help them. But it also, because it isn't human, because it doesn't have a soul, it can also do damage in that way. There's people who use AI for erotic purposes. And again, that's, you know, in a ways, parts of me say, hey, if there's something that you want to generate using artificial intelligence because it's just niche and you can't find a way to get it any other way, well, that's cool. Or is it? What are the ethics of that? I don't have that answer. It's one of the things that I want most about AI is ethics, is I want there to be ethics surrounding the use of generative AI. I want there to be ethics in terms of how we train them. I want there to be ethics in terms of how we use them. I want there to be guidelines. And I definitely do not want them to be so censored and strangled that we are basically dictating morals onto the rest of society as a result. But these are weird questions. These are hard questions. it's a thing. Everweave. Oh, okay. Yeah, guidelines would be a start. Because there are people out there who say like, oh, the best gaming experience that you can possibly get is gaming in person with your friends. But not everybody has that option. You could live remotely. You could have not enough people around you who are ready, willing, able to play. Maybe you have accessibility issues that prevent you from being able to meet up with other people in person. So you play online. And maybe the online game is fantastic and that's great. And then someone says, well, hey, if you can do it with AI, now you don't even need the friends. You can role play by yourself. You can use it as a creative outlet for yourself, because you can be as creative as you want speaking to an AI. And I've heard also that slop in, slop out, but creative in, better output. That if you make an effort in the stuff that you type to an AI, you'll get better results. I don't know, but that's the thing. It is tough. I know that I'm doing a lot of this of saying here is a problem and I don't have an answer for it, and I wish that everybody can get what they needed, and I wish that people can get what they needed without it hurting anybody else, and I don't know how possible that is. I can hear my therapist screaming already over, you don't need friends because now we have AI. Yeah, like I think it is like a lot of things. It is a tool, and I think that it is a tool that is very easy for us to nitpick and show people who have abused AI or who that AI have failed and say AI overall is bad. Just as I think it's easy for us to say, hey, AI helps me in my work, so it can't possibly be bad. It's a tool, but it's a tool that carries a certain amount of danger as well. I wouldn't want to hand a 5-year-old access to an LLM and say, this is your life now, without supervision, without figuring out what's happening, without educating them. In much the same way that I think that it's healthy to be able to have a video game that you can play that is single player and you don't need anybody else around. But I think it's the sort of thing that I'd be like, you should not only play video games by yourself. You should try to make an effort to have connections with other people. That is a good thing. So as a tool, great, but it's hard to moderate that kind of tool usage sometimes. Like solo RP could use and benefit from a lot of automation, but that is not what solo RP is supposed to be. Yep. But solo RP with a lot of automation are single player video games, which have been scripted in order to allow you to explore a story. Some of which have branching dialogue or action options so that you can follow different paths of the story. That's basically solo role-playing with a lot of automation. You're playing a video game. So there's that. I solo RP'd a lot before I met Quinn. God damn it. Solo RP as well, unscripted single. Yeah. Yeah, AI Dungeon was a thing. Absolutely, it was Flower of August, and it was an interesting thing. And people used it, and people had fun with it. I get very nervous when somebody comes right out and says, this technology is horrible and it needs to be destroyed. I get very nervous when someone says, this technology is a savior and we need to embrace it. I think I'm much more middle of the road on this particular subject. I'm somebody who believes very strongly that this is not something that will go away, and this has some amazing implications, but that it needs guidelines and it needs oversight. And we need to learn that just like we don't want to park our children down in front of a television 24/7, we don't want to put our children on the internet and with no safeguards, no supervision, no training, no teaching, no warning. That's a thing that we're just gonna have to figure out. Because I also know that we do a lot of hand-wringing when it's things that are different from the way that we grew up. But I grew up with access to the internet, and I was taught values, but it's not like my parents were looking over my shoulder the instant that I started using it. I had access to the internet relatively early for a Canadian, because I had dial-up access through my father's work. which meant that also my internet time was limited. I could only spend 30 minutes on at a time, like per day, because it used up our phone. But I had access for early on, and I turned out okay, right? I feel uncomfortable when people just come right out and say like, no, you're not allowed to do this, kablam. But it might also be necessary. Social media did not exist in the way that I had these back in the day. And now countries are doing things like banning the use of social media for people under the age of this. Well, Australia, for instance, is 16. And that's something that I'm curious about. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe it's going too far. Maybe it's not giving our youth enough credit. Maybe it's us not understanding technology or being afraid of it. Maybe it's also understanding that the power of social media is so great that it's essentially like putting a vat of corrosive chemicals in a 8-year-old's hands and saying, don't spill it. Stuff to know. I got sent into the wilds with a knife and a ban on using phones. Well, way to go. Glad you all have reasonable opinions. I've seen so many servers go on witch hunts. I saw an actual play people immediately reply to like these AI portraits do not watch. I think that this is similar. I'm about to step in another fucking minefield here. This is similar to the way that I feel about Harry Potter. I think that when it comes to AI, I am much more comfortable with you saying, this is why I use it, or this is why I don't use it, and say, if you've thought about it, and you've reasoned the different sides of the argument, then you can't necessarily be wrong, as long as you have considered everything. Harry Potter, if you want to watch the movies, if you want to read the books, if you want to play the video games, I don't think you're wrong for doing that. If you say that you don't want to read the books and that you don't want to watch the movies and you don't want to play the video games because you think that J.K. Rowling is a bigot, I think you're not wrong. I don't engage with Harry Potter material anymore because I feel uncomfortable by it. It's tainted for me. But I also would urge people to understand that of the people who made the Harry Potter video game, 99.9% of the people who made that are not massive bigots. I also think that you have to think that anytime that you consume a Harry Potter product, you are enabling the platform of somebody who is doing very real damage to a marginalized community. But I would also say that a lot of this is hand-wringing because people will say, well, I'll never watch Harry Potter again, but then they'll order pizza from Pizza Hut. And the CEO of Pizza Hut at one point donated to anti-abortion causes. And so now you're supporting anti-abortion because you ordered a pizza. Like, there's no ethical consumption in capitalism. And it's a tough situation to be in, which is why I think be informed and make your decision at that point. But forcing your opinion on other people, you got to be very careful because there is no absolute truth here. Yep, I stand by my trans friends, and I don't like what J.K. Rowling is doing, and I'm resisting it, and I don't give her money. But I'm also not about to say, like, if you played Hogwarts Legacy, you hate trans people. I don't agree with that. I don't. Because I think that the majority of people who worked on that game are not doing that. And I think that it's a shame to take away the work from a lot of people just because of one person who is a bad person. Especially because a ton of the other things you consume are just as likely to be a problem. So, hard lines are rough. And generative AI has the same kind of thing, right? That's the key for me as well. Is that with AI, I think that if you refuse to use it because you are against it for various reasons, totally cool. If you use it and you think that it's worth it for you, totally cool. As long as you have understood the sides of the argument, or as long as you've at least made an effort to understand, that's where I fall at the moment. And yes, you can vote with your dollar. It's absolutely true. But that's That's where I fall. And I know that I'm not necessarily correct. And my viewpoints can evolve and change. But I'm not going to stop listening to Beethoven's Fifth because Beethoven probably had some problematic viewpoints back in the day, right? Context is important as well. I'm not going to refuse to look at Michelangelo's David because he was Catholic, and Catholics have committed some serious crimes in the past. Like, that's not something that I'm willing to start doing. I'm not willing to throw art away just because. So, and Beethoven is dead. You're right. It helps. Yeah. So Kate says, I'm not giving my money to her, meaning J.K. Rowling, and actually saying I don't want this whenever Harry Potter content crosses my feeds, but I'm not going to yell at somebody who has a Harry Potter bookmark in their room. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, you don't know the kinds of ethics calculus that other people have put into these sorts of things in much the same way as AI. So, no, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say you don't deserve to be at my table because you have used generative AI to create a character pick. But I may also be the sort of person who will say on stream right now with RPG Clinic, I would feel uncomfortable with somebody sitting down at the table and saying, okay, so I'm here and the character concept that I came up with, I just typed in, give me a character concept for an RPG Clinic stream, and I let AI generate it. I'd be like, I'm not really comfortable with us playing with that. That is, you've gone too far. You have not put in the amount of creative effort that I would expect of somebody on this stream. Now, I'm not saying anybody's done that. I really doubt it. But that's a line that I wouldn't want to cross. But that's because that's me. There's a big difference between setting a boundary and controlling somebody else. And that's something that I think that people need to do more at their role-playing tables. Is setting a boundary means this is what I'm not comfortable engaging in. Controlling is saying, you have to do this. The thing is, boundary setting still can influence other people. If I say, I will not sit at this table if this table is going to... Here's a better way of putting it. I can say, I don't want to play this game if it involves sexual assault, right? That's one of my lines. I don't like playing in games with sexual assault in them. So I say, I don't want to play in a game with sexual assault. That's a boundary that I'm creating for myself. And other people can say, oh, well, then we'll make sure that the game doesn't have that. That's them reacting to my boundary. They can also say, well, we're not willing to take out sexual assault in the game, and that's okay. But it means that I leave. And so some people might say, well, hey, well, now you're holding me hostage because you're saying, like, if I don't take this out of the game, then you won't play. The reality is that I'm not holding them hostage. I'm just withholding my participation. Controlling would be me going up to somebody and saying, all right, so we're going to play this game and this is how we're going to play it. And you don't have a choice. Well, that's controlling. That's not me limiting it based on my presence. It's me making sure that you do something that I want. That's the difference. Set boundaries. Clear boundaries and healthy boundaries are amazing for role-playing games. You want to set a boundary that says, at my table, I don't want to play at a table that doesn't use AI? Healthy. Saying no one should be using AI in their role-playing? That's controlling. And maybe that's not as healthy. So at the moment, that's where I land. I land on setting boundaries for myself and then discussing the rest with the people who I'm playing with. Our lines and veils that we have at RPG Clinic are ones that we've negotiated with each other, and we revisit them from time to time because it's us setting boundaries and everyone else agreeing to stay within those boundaries. It's not somebody coming in and saying, this is how it must be done. Because if RPG Clinic decided at one point, if the three of us decided we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I say I have no interest in running Dungeons and Dragons, then at that point, if the other three say, well, that's the only thing that we want to play from now on, then they're setting a boundary, and then I can choose to leave, right? That's kind of what it sets to. Gwen for World Empress? Sure. Erwin is saying, it's like saying I hate artificers and I don't use them in my games versus saying I hate artificers and no one should use them ever. Yep, the latter is true, but I don't have that power. Pineapple is perfect. Yeah. So that's the key here, I think, is to establish that. And I don't think it's wrong if players or storytellers or game masters or whoever just come forward and say, I would really rather that this not happen. It's fine. I would just advise that you not judge somebody because of what they've chosen to do. They may have different ethics than you do and a different calculus, and that's fine. Here's another weird ass example that I can throw out there. If somebody says the reason that I don't like large language models is because of the environmental impact that it has, and I say okay, except that my use of large language models is restricted to a model that I downloaded locally to my machine, which is already bought, paid for, and uses electricity that is much cheaper than almost anywhere else on the planet. So my environmental impact is much lower compared to somebody else. It might not be something that people have considered, but you could also claim you use the technology, therefore you support it, therefore other people will use it, therefore it has an effect on the environment. Same deal. Splooey's greatest achievement is rhyming his character names with their class. Reasonable arguments that local models use more electricity per user. Zablica, that's true, except if my electricity costs 5% of what the data center's electricity uses, then that's another thing to take into account. I don't mean monetary cost, I mean environmental cost. Again, like I said, I live in an area where I'm very lucky. We have hydroelectric power. The cost has already been paid. But if a data center is located in a place that burns coal, that's another problem. I mean, look, I'm also mad at AI for another reason. Now it's becoming very difficult to purchase RAM or SSDs, and that is a shame. If my computer blows up today and I need to get a new computer, I'm gonna have to pay 6 times what I normally would have to pay for RAM. Like, it sucks. Yeah, people don't say using YouTube has an environmental impact. Everything has an environmental impact. So people tend to pick on things and then forget other things, right? Like, and this is not an argument that I'm making. It's an argument that I've heard. Making that clear, is that I can make the argument that you can say you use LLMs, therefore you're not being environmentally conscious, and I can say you have 2 children. And arguably, having a child is one of the worst things you can do for the environment. But people aren't telling people not to have kids for that reason. But logically, you're creating an entire life, and that life will end up having an environmental impact on the planet. So it's that kind of reductive reasoning that I object to. I think Kung Fu Fenris was the one who mentioned it earlier. It's things like you can use AI, and then you can say, oh, well, I won't use AI, but I will fly 3 times a year for personal vacation purposes. And then I can say, well, you're generating waste in another way. You own a car, same thing. You eat certain foods, same thing. There's so many ways to divide up the pie, and we tend to be blind to the things that we do and critical of the things that we're against. And it's one of the issues that people who have that kind of social consciousness in their head is that there's also going to be a subset of the population who really, really enjoys judging other people, and that can hurt. Or who think that if you are not as hardlined in your reasoning as I am, therefore you are part of the problem, therefore you are an enemy, can be a real problem. This is something that we've seen right now in countries, which I will not name, where the left-leaning side of those countries can't get it together because they're too busy not only facing off against the right side, they're also facing off against each other for either not being left enough or for being too left. So there we go. If I had a wish granted regarding this particularly at work, is that there was an explanation of how LLMs work, that it's a really basic, sophisticated predictive texting. Yeah. If I have to do one more AI-generated trivia quiz at an office party with wrong answers, I'll explode. Yeah, no, I'd fucking explode right away. Can't stand it. Oh god, it sucks. That's the thing, is that you use AI as a tool, that's fine. The problem is the instant that you rely on AI, you're in trouble. Because AI isn't reliable. It's not 100% reliable. I think that it's amazing that you can use things like LLMs or whatever to do things like scan for rare forms of disease. I think that's amazing, but I think that you'd have to check up on that afterwards once you get a positive result. You'd have to verify it. And in the same way, also, you can't only rely on AI for that, because then if you get a false negative, then somebody risks never being diagnosed in the first place. But there's that. Power use of computing is often related to how long parts are powered on for, and I don't think people have enough control over their mental processes to optimize that. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, privacy cost is a thing. Hank Green is an interesting guy because I think that he often thinks about a lot of things and then puts them out in the universe, but it's just important to note that he is not always correct, and he himself would be the first person to tell you. So there's that to help. People shit on it a lot in the use of art and say that there's no use in art, but animation is 90% replicating the same frames. Making animation easier is going to be great for animators who draw the keyframe. Yes. This is a significant thing. This is a thing that people can see. It's one of the things that I've heard about AI that I agree with, is that I want AI to do the 90% of the job that sucks, which is the repetitiveness, the rote, the stuff that doesn't really require anything more than effort on my part, not thinking, not creativity, and I want it to not take over the parts that are fun. And right now what AI is doing is that it's taking over the parts that are fun and creative and interesting and making it rote. And that's less good. So the thing is, Kung Fu Fenris, there's an argument here, is that once upon a time you needed an animation farm in order to create something like, for instance, old Disney films. And now you could say that, but something that used to take somebody 100 hours to do, now you can do it in 30 minutes. And that's true. That's been true for a long time. That's not AI. Computer animation has done wonders to be able to make animation accessible and cheaper for a lot of people. And what you've done is you've reduced the amount of rote work. And so therefore creators now have more access to animation than they did before. And yes, that's taken away from some people who have just done rote behavior over and over again, but it means that then they can make their own stuff. It's really fucking hard. You develop a technology that says, hey, I've developed a light box, so now you can trace what you've already done. And now you've made it so that animation is just that much more possible, but now you've taken away from the person who said, well, now I didn't need a light box to trace, and now I'm not as useful anymore. Technology and progress will always disadvantage somebody because it means that they are replaced or become obsolete. And I'm not the sort of person who believes that then progress should stop or regress. Somebody who thinks that progress should be equitable. Yeah. I would absolutely love, and source, by the way, for Kung Fu Fenris, just so that you I don't work in the animation industry. I work in the video game industry, which has some parallels to it. But my father was an animation producer for decades, and my father's father was a producer for animation for decades. So I'm exposed to it. I know the animation industry pretty well. So Kung Fu Fenris, when you say I kind of agree and I feel to that, but we are running out of jobs that are either not menial labor or ownership, this is why I want things like, if AI is so great in a utopian society, which I admit does not exist at the moment, but my ideal would be that means that everybody in the world gets to do less menial labor, but they still get to have the same amount of money and luxuries. You know, like, I'm not starting to say like communism is a great idea. Socialism is something that I'm far more attached to. But if AI is so great that it means that now nobody has to do menial tasks, well, then everybody should benefit from that. So that then they can spend that time that they would have been doing menial tasks on doing things like self-expression, creativity, exercise, food prep, like, you know, like all of those things I think are things that I would love to be able to see. If robots become the thing that everybody can have in their homes, and so therefore people don't have to do things like clean or cook, I think that's fantastic. Wonderful. As long as everybody has access to it. If only a few people do, that sucks. Universal basic income. Yeah, that's fair, Kung Fu Fenris. That is totally fair. Yeah, we're not going to go into huge political theory. But overall, for me, the point is, I don't want people to look down on a tool just because it's going to make life harder for other people. I think people should look down on a tool why it's making life harder for other people. And if AI is something that can help you, great. If AI is something, however, that means that other people are not only finding less work, but the reason they're finding less work is because their work was stolen, and that if the more that we rely on this AI, if it doesn't have new things to train on, it means that it will never be able to become any more than it is now. AI cannot be creative. At the moment, definition of a large language model, definition of things like stable diffusion, it cannot create. It can only predict. It can only attempt to copy what somebody is asking it to by predicting the next word. It cannot be truly creative. That is something that it has no ability to do. It can do it. It can produce a facsimile of creation that is very, very, very convincing for a lot of people. But that does not mean that it is creative. Yeah. And that's the issue. As Kate said, shareholders need money now instead of in 5 years, once one little sliver of AI is actually polished and out of beta. Yeah. Flower Vodka says, to be a bit reductive here, I'd rather my players have no character portraits than have one that was made in the data center that cost me a nature park. Yeah, I can understand. But again, what that's saying is, are you creating the boundary for yourself? I don't want to be at a table where generative AI is a significant presence. Or are you being controlling by telling your players, if you use generative AI, no matter where, no matter when, I don't want you at my table? That's a different question. Those are two different statements. And my conjecture here is that you're far better off being somebody who establishes a boundary than being somebody who is attempting to control other people's behavior. You can try to convince other people, but control is something else. What is creativity? Yeah. But like it's exactly as I said before. The observation, I'm afraid I don't know who said it, and I might be paraphrasing, but AI accidentally made me believe in the concept of a human soul by showing me what art looks like without it. And I agree. I can look at something that's AI generated and I can be like, this is pretty, but it doesn't have a spark. That takes something else. something that AI does not possess. I am making that as a definitive statement because the people who made AI would be able to tell you the same thing. They cannot think. That is not a capability that they possess. Yeah. Pragmatic side of me says, I don't want you to use AI if it's obvious. Spotting it is what hurts my experience. If I can't tell, then whatever. I steal art with face claims all the time, after all. So that's another thing, is that I see a lot of people who yell and yell and yell about AI and how it steals, except that then they are also doing things like, I look at their profile picture and it's a picture that they didn't draw and that they didn't pay for. Or it's somebody who has, like, I have a profile pic and that profile pic is an artist's rendering of Mickey Mouse, but it's not an official Disney rendering of Mickey Mouse. So not only did I steal the artist's work, that artist stole from Disney. So it is on a much smaller scale, but people steal all the time. People steal art all the time. There have been people who have run role-playing games where they've lifted the plot 90% wholesale from a book that they've read. Like, well, we're going to play in a campaign, and in this campaign, everybody lives on a space station, and the space station is full of children who are training to be the next generation of warriors, and they have to play these war games against each other. Well, now I've just described Ender's Game, but if my players haven't read Ender's Game, they don't know that I've stolen that. And then to what level is stealing if I'm saying I'm inspired by? Okay, well, I read Ender's Game, and I thought I had some interesting ideas about using games to train children for a thing. So I'm going to make I'm going to do a story which involves people who have to play games at an academy in order to prove themselves as the next exalts destined to rule creation. Did I steal from Orson Scott Card? And let's set aside the fact that Orson Scott Card is about as bad or worse than J.K. Rowling in some respects. Or was I just inspired? And was I inspired by him, or was I inspired by any number of other creations that involve people playing games in order to improve themselves? Or was I just inspired by history? Because that's also a thing that's happened in history. So that's that. But also, Gil, when you say steal from Disney, Walt was a monster? Okay, but when is it all right? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between saying that this person was bad and so it's okay to commit crimes against them, and this person was good so it's not? Stuff. Okay, let me just get caught up on chat here. I don't like how human she sounds. Erwin, who are you referring to? I don't like how human she sounds. It's creepy, and to be honest, I'm pissed that only Alexa is set up for children can use the dragon voice. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I may have missed it. They had to censor it when it moved to Geek and Sundry. What had to be censored when it moved to Geek and Sundry? We weren't. They never censored us. I got a page of notes once about a script that had yet to be produced, but it wasn't censorship. It was just a page of notes. They didn't actually demand any changes at all. They were good notes. It's the one interaction I've had with Felicia Day. There's a degree of difference there, yeah. I'm just pointing out that face claiming can be compared against Gen AI use. It is not that bad, but there are some ethics there too. Gwen says, I've learned this weekend you're not allowed to talk about Exalted unless that's the next game being played because my heart cannot handle it. That's fair. Hey, Jello Shots! Yeah. Come and see me dressed as a nurse. That's what we're here for. That's exactly what we're here for. Yeah, J.K. Rowling is giving Card a fucking run for his money these days. You're right. They're both dicks. The line between stealing and inspiration is a fine line that's very blurry enough up to interpretation. Yeah. Critical Role. That's fair. Talking to Alexa conversationally. Okay, that makes sense. Critical Roles used all official D&D art and fan art they stole. They ended up blurring it all on Geek and Sundry. Okay, that makes more sense. Yep, but that's And I admit, and I don't really have much of an ethical justification for this. If you're playing at home, playing in your own tiny little game, and you want to use generative AI, I'm actually way more okay with that than I would be if you were streaming it. I don't really know why that makes a difference. But if you're just like sitting at home with your friends and you're like, hey, I have a character and this is what my character looks like, and you slap down a character that you got generated by AI arts generator. If you're at home with your friends, I kind of don't give a shit nearly as much as if you are streaming your game. And maybe that's wrong of me. Some of my friends' first epic campaign was just Wheel of Time with them as the main characters, and no one had read the books. The player was so sad when she learned the books existed. Yeah, that's fair. Is Gen AI smoking? Maybe. Using the art for personal use over possibly commercialization of stolen art. So there's a game that I play. It's a game that I enjoy quite a bit, Netrunner. I'm sure that a lot of people know that this is a game that I've played and that I've achieved some amount of success at. I used to stream Netrunner with Kate. We're going to try to get back to it at some point, hopefully, maybe. Depends. And it depends on our work situations and stuff, but it's something that we want to get back to now that we kind of know what it would take to do it properly. Kate and I are people who enjoy streaming if we can do it to a certain minimum level of quality. We don't really like doing things half-assed. But Netrunner, when it was first canceled, was picked up by a fan organization, at the time known as Nisei, now known as Null Signal Games. And their first sets involved AI-generated art for the cards. And the art sucked. The art was not good. It was not nearly as good as Fantasy Flight. Nobody expected it to be because Fantasy Flight was a company that had a lot of money and could afford to pay top-tier artists. And this was a fan-run organization with no money. Now they make enough money that they don't pay the designers, but they pay the artists. Because there's plenty of people who are out there ready to help design the game for free, but there aren't a lot of people who are willing to donate quality art. So they pay for artists now for sets that they release these days, this community-run organization, but they don't pay the designers. Now, I am not an artist, or at least I'm not a visual artist, but I am a designer. So why am I not angry that they're not paying designers, but they are paying artists? I wouldn't be able to tell you that. It's a tough thing. But there is a part of me that's like, you should be paying the people who are generating your content if you have the money. But they don't have the money. They just don't. They can't operate on that scale, so they can't make it. They're a not-for-profit organization. So they're choosing to spend the money where they need to in order to make sure that the game can be successful and can continue. And right now that's paying for artists because they realized using AI-generated art that first it wasn't good. Admittedly, this was way back. This was before art has improved significantly. AI art is getting exponentially better year over year, and this was back in like 2018, 2017, I think, somewhere around there. So like AI art was just not nearly at the same level, but they've since decided that they don't want to do that. But they did once, and they can't erase that part of their history. And they also are not about to start reissuing those sets with full art because they can't afford to pay artists to do a set that's already exists that players probably won't replace. So there's that. Requiem says, when streaming, if you haven't paid for the pick and or given credit to the creator that you're posting to the world, you can't really credit AI when they're learning from other people's art. Yep. I think playing at home generative AI is not all that different from Googling a pick for your character. It's possibly yes, but also possibly no. Well, I also assume it has to do with you having the time to do them as well, but I do love when you have the time or inclination. Oh, for streams, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Sunday is a ritual for us. We know that it's happening. But Flower Focus says, can I also bring up the topic of how the mere existence of AI now makes the act of appreciating real art worse, since now you have to squint and ask, is this AI, to things like you like at first glance? Yeah. Yep. It is rough. It sucks. It sucks that now whenever I see something, I have to wonder whether or not it's been generated. It is an issue. Everyone says, this is what we're trying to do with the next game of Piggypack. There are a lot of artists who, in an effort to oppose AI, release sketches free for use with credit of NPC portraits or commissioning. Yeah, with sub money. So one of the things that we have here is we have, we do ask for financial support. We have a Patreon so that people can do that. That's fantastic. That's what we hope for. I will also warn you that this stream, because this was more of a test stream, we don't have it set up to show the credits. So I apologize to our patrons right now. This stream will probably not have credits attached to it. But one of the things that we can do with this money is that we can consider about things like commissioning. There is an issue. We want to have a bank of money in case something breaks, because that can happen. Things like our microphones, the cameras that we're using, our soundboard, our computers, and our monitors, all of which are kind of essential for the stream to run. And if something breaks, we want to be able to replace it. So we have kind of a cache that we hold on to, a certain minimum that we have in order to make sure that we can do that. And then when there is more money, then we can consider what else that we would like to do with it. And there's certain options. Things like also we license some music. The music that you're hearing now is from Epidemic Sound. We license that music. We pay for it. Our next campaign, one thing that we did for Montreal by Moonlight is that I allowed myself to use music that was not licensed. Again, like video game music or other tracks that we could get away with, because in my opinion, when we posted the VOD to YouTube, then those could, the people who own the rights to those tracks could then just demand money from the use of those videos. So I was like, great, that's fine. Like they're getting paid, so I don't care. For our next campaign, we're probably going to switch back to using only royalty-free licensed music, or using music that we've paid for. Just because there's things like, if we ever do get to 1,000 subscribers on this channel, then we'll be able to do things like unlock emotes and stuff that people could use, and we'd like to be able to do that, but you can't if the majority of your content is being claimed by somebody else. So we won't do that for this campaign, but otherwise elsewhere. Oh, I now seem to have the ability to show credits, so I will try to do that at the end of the stream. Let's just copy this. We'll add browser source, call it credits. You'll see this, which will be weird. And then, oops, that's not what we meant. That's the wrong thing. I just want to make sure that the credits get shown. And let's just make sure that we chat amongst yourselves while I sort this out here. So then I've got that, and then I will add a filter. The filter will be to scroll, and the scroll will be vertically at a speed of 50. And it's acting weird. I think I might need to refresh the source. I think I might have the wrong URL, so let's try this. Yeah, if you hadn't hit the subscribe button, please do. It will help people get emotes. We're not interested in making money on this. That's not something that we can do. So Yeah, the credits are not going to work the way that I'd hoped at the moment. And that's just because I haven't. I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to manually scroll through them. There you go. Look at all these people who are super cool. These people all helped to bring this stream to you. And you can join today at that. We'll figure out how to do it better for this. Oh, I have to make it real large. Then we have to turn the filter on, turn the scroll on, refresh the source. Look at them all. Look at them all. They're so cool. We'll just slip that there so that people can see it as it runs through. At any rate, you're not allowed to say, "Oh, John," to me when I'm not the one who made the page. I'm trying as best I can. This, as you can tell, this was a stream that was done out of a desire for speed as opposed to a desire for like this is for testing to make sure that the lag was going to work. Oh, I have info. I see. So Flower of August, the PBIS is no more. We got the number of people that we needed to max out the PBIS, and the PBIS will retire. It did not explode. That's okay. But it just means that in the future, what we were hoping, not hoping, what we were planning in case we had a severe overflow, a stretch goal, we might be able to put in at another point for something in case we ever have a specific need. The thing that we wanted to do for the marathon was to get people to move from Twitch to YouTube and to move their support from Twitch to Patreon. That was the goal. We didn't have a financial goal that we needed. So in previous marathons, it's been things like, we want to buy this camera. So we're going to do a thing to try to raise up enough funds so that we can buy this camera. We don't actually have anything like that at the moment. All of our expenses are paid for. Epidemic Sound, where we license our music, paid for. Our tech, paid for. At this point now, I might requisition some funds so that we can get twitchat.fr, the premium version for clinic hours. That costs £89. We can pay for that. Or we can do it monthly. Right? Like I'd have to look up exactly how much it costs. We currently do not need to purchase any gaming books because we've purchased the gaming books that we need. You'll see that Daggerheart is right here. Daggerheart is something that we are looking at, but we, do not have any plans to end Montreal by Moonlit anytime soon. We do not have an end date for that. I've said this many times. Kate, Liz, and Scott have all said this many times. We're repeating it because it's still true. But we are also still on the lookout for games because the one thing that we don't want to do is finish a game and then not know what we're playing next. That's happened to us before. It meant that we ended up playing a lot of one-shots, and that starts becoming tiresome for the audience. And also, the more that we play one-shots, the less we're actually figuring out what our next long-term campaign is going to be. So things like we will purchase games to try on our own time outside of stream, and that's paid for by our Patreon, which is very appreciated. It just means that we don't have to go out of pocket for the streams. That's... What are you curious about? If we hadn't hit 30, there would have been no bombshell, and we never know what it could have been. But what would have happened without the bombshell? Aragorn, I will tell you that. That is an easy thing for me to answer. By the time we already had hit the plot twist. So the plot twist, great. We already knew that that was going to happen, so I wrote that down. I also decided what the bombshell would be, and I did tell people, I'm not going to have the bombshell drop during the marathon unless we hit the thing, and if we don't hit the thing, that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to spoil what the bombshell was. I'm sure that there's people who are still interested in watching that episode. It's a long one. It's 6 hours long. It's going to take people some time to get through it. I get it. So I'm not going to spoil it. But what I will say is the bombshell would not have occurred in that sense. It would have, there still would have been a thing for everybody to do. But if you watch the episode, everybody decided on courses of action. Nobody decided on a course of action based on the bombshell until it dropped. What would have happened is they would have shown up and that particular event would not have occurred. So I would have held some things in reserve, or those sorts of things would never have happened. I can get more specific in the spoilers channel on the Discord because I don't want to spoil things here. Yeah. By the time Montreal by Moonlight ends, the Daggerheart expansion will be out. More werewolves. Yep. So that is something, like, for instance, we may end up buying that. We haven't even played Daggerheart, but we may get that. Daggerheart as a system is something that I have some interest in. The issue is, do we as a group want to play a system that puts fewer social mechanics in the player's hands? I don't know if it's going to be that much of a problem. But one thing that our players really like to do is interact socially with things and have the mechanics matter for that. And arguably, there's it is slightly more complex if you have access to things like the attribute system. So the idea of, is this wits insight, or is this charisma persuasion, or is it strength intimidation? Like, there's some fun there, and that complexity is not in Daggerheart. And also in terms of powers that you get to use, there aren't as many in Werewolf as, say, in Exalted that are just straight up social stuff that you can use, but they do exist. Whereas in Daggerheart, there aren't that many powers that you can use that are social designed. And that's just the way the game is designed. The game is designed to be kind of like a hybrid of D&D and other things. So we haven't figured out whether that's something that will be long-term sustainable for us, because we really do enjoy playing in the storyteller system, which has those mechanics for social stuff. But do we need them? It's another question, because, like, asking for a Winsight roll all the time is, you know, it's just one kind of roll. So it's a question. It's a question mark. So just to put some breaks on things, the stream will have to end soon. It's already 4 o'clock, but to just put some breaks on things, Mage, I cannot commit to Mage. The reason I can't commit to Mage is because Mage in its current form, both Ascension and Awakening, are too difficult for a stream environment for players who are not very familiar with Mage. One of the things that I don't want to make my players do is try to figure out how to make something work with the pressure of audience watching. And I know that the chat isn't going to be like super aggro on them and be like, think faster, but there's pressure when you're streaming. Even choosing which powers you want to use at any one point in time is different. It's difficult. And that can be frustrating for people playing Exalted, where you have a lot of different charms. Mage, which is so open-ended, can be even harder. What kind of an effect is this? What spheres do you have to call upon? Is it vulgar, or is it... So there's a lot of things there, and that's hard. And I'm not sure I want to put the players through that, even though I do love Mage, and I ran a Mage LARP for like 6 years, and a Mage LARP has time pressure, but I don't necessarily want to put them through that. But we also know that we like the 5th edition rule set for the Storyteller games. And so therefore, I'm waiting to see if Mage 5th will make things easier on the players while still being rich. One of the reasons why I didn't like Awakening versus Ascension is that I didn't like the meta story around it nearly as much. I liked the traditions. I liked the concept of things like the technocracy and all that. I didn't want it to become an eldritch horror game, which is what Awakening was. And so we'll see. Maybe 5th edition is going to make a lot of changes to Mage, and then it'll be a lot easier for us to run and play, and I will be thrilled for us to play in that universe if the players want to play in there. But that's the thing about Mage. I don't want that. Also, Mage, more than a lot of other games, can attract, and this is just based on my own experience, Mage can attract a lot of people who have very strong feelings about how the game is supposed to work, and they can be assholes when they see people play in the way that they don't want. And I want to avoid that, if at all possible. When it came to Werewolf 5th Edition, didn't end up being a problem, because very early on, we had 1 or 2 people show up and be like, I don't like this version of Werewolf. And we're like, great, thanks, see you later. And then they didn't come back. So I'm kind of hoping that that's what would happen with Mage 5th. But there's that. Powered by the Apocalypse. So we get a lot of people who suggest Powered by the Apocalypse games. They have never done well for us in terms of the system, because they're not designed for long form play. One of the things that's interesting that Kung Fu Fenris brought up recently is that there was at one point for Vampire this belief that like Chronicles shouldn't be that long, and so the game was balanced around that. Thing is, we haven't played Vampire 5th here, so I can't comment on it. And we've made Werewolf 5th work, but like Powered by the Apocalypse games are just not designed for long-term character growth and benefit, and it's something that we struggled with. The Avatar Legends is partially based on Powered by the Apocalypse. It has some roots there, and that game, once we got up to like the 20 episode mark, we were like, the characters kind of all feel samey and there isn't much we can do with them at this point. So we're done. And we finished it out. Game was super enjoyable. We loved playing it, but we loved playing it because of the story and not because of the mechanics. Also, the combat mechanics in Avatar Legends suck. I hate them. They may not objectively suck, but I hate them. I thought it would be cool, and then in practice, it just ended up being a mess. It was not interesting to play. So, yeah. Our characters couldn't advance anymore. So it just ended up being annoying and frustrating. But also, when your characters can't advance anymore, that means that also there's no real, like, there aren't vulnerabilities and strengths as much in Powered by the Apocalypse. Once you get powered, at that point it's like, well, I'm either good at everything and really good at some things, and there isn't anything that I'm just not that good at. It just takes a very short amount of time for that to happen. But if you start slowing down progression in Powered by the Apocalypse games to enable long-term growth like that, then characters feel like they're going nowhere. So it's just not built for the kinds of games that we play. I'm not saying they're bad, they're just not built for our table. So TT, rotes are definitely something that you can use, which can be useful and helpful. The thing is, part of the magic of Mage, is that it's a game where you can come up with things on the spot, and that's part of the fun. I don't want my players to feel like they have to leave out a whole part of the magic system because it's hard. So that's why I'm seeing, because also if you take away some of the cognitive load, that'll help. And 5th edition takes a lot of the cognitive load off compared to other things, just because you aren't having to roll 4 different rolls for every round of combat, for instance. So it's so easy. Just follow these 8 steps. And no, you can't really team up or change targets. That's not efficient. Yep. Yeah. Jealous Shot says, I feel like the Avatar Legend combat were put together at the last moment. It doesn't flow with any other part of the game. And I agree with you there. There was things that they said that were great, which I really, really liked. Things like, we're not going to do bending descriptions in that way. Like we're not going to say like, here's how to do a water whip versus here's how to do a, here's how to change something into ice versus, it was just like, look, you can bend and figure it out. Like that's what matters. I liked that. I liked the fact that non-benders were not automatically just not as good as benders. I liked that quite a bit too. I think that that's more fun. It's just the combat was a nightmare. I really just didn't like that at all. And the fact that your characters could just max out after 20 sessions. Yeah, and combat was also convoluted, which was weird. Let me see. Let's just go up. Here's Applicant. So it's interesting how people get different things from reading games. Mage the Awakening 2nd Edition did not feel focused on Eldritch Horror. Kung Fu Fenris mentioned Unknown Armies being very bleak, but I didn't get that impression from 3rd Ed. I want to like Powered by the Apocalypse more than I do. I seem to struggle. Oh no, that's weirdness. Zavlika says on Eldritch Horror. Yeah. Yeah. At any rate, look, I've done a lot of streaming in the past couple of days. And this stream has gone on for longer than I expected. Look, it's great. I love the fact that people have been able to come in. Maybe we'll do another one soon. That would be cool too. But for now, I think I'm gonna call it here. We've been talking a lot. I can feel that I desperately need to drink something. And I neglected to bring water because I didn't know that we'd be here for this long. And as much as I'm sure that water could appear in front of me magically, it's also getting to that time. Oh, wussing out? Come on, Aragorn. You're not allowed to say wussing out. God damn it. Anyway, folks, thanks to our patrons for making this possible, but honestly, thanks to everybody who watches. That's the fantastic part of this, is that, like, we don't... what we want is for you to enjoy it. And you're here, and that's great. Thanks for the conversation. It was an interesting conversation that we had about AI here. Super appreciated for that. Know that we're on holiday schedule, so there will be fewer streams leading forward for the next week or two. For instance, Montreal by Moonlight will not take place this Sunday. If there is a stream, there might very well be one, but it will not be Montreal by Moonlight. Liz and Scott are not available, so we're not going to do that. But keep tuning in. The Discord is the place to talk. I will soon post about what would have happened if I hadn't met the bombshell requirement for in Montreal by Moonlight spoilers. But until then, 6 more hours, Splooey. For you, I'd talk for 6 more hours. But what I will tell you, Splooey, is that I have 36 more push-ups to give you, so I will go and take care of those right now. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for helping out with the tech.